Welcome to Earthtide Studios. I'm Zach Knight, and in today's video, we're going to be having a look at the sick new real-time tuner, METATUNE from Slate Digital. METATUNE is a really powerful tuning plugin and comes as part of the all-access pack with Slate Digital. And as you'll see in this video, it actually stands up against the industry-leading tuning plugin Autotune in many ways. Before we dive deep into it, I just want to let you know that we have a free vocal production course that teaches you the basics of recording, editing, and mixing. If you want that, just click the link below. But for now, let's get into METATUNE. So we're in Cubase and we're going to be using a track that I'm working on for one of my clients, Josh Flint. This is the track. Working title we've got currently is Quiet Gun. And we're going to check out all of the different functions that METATUNE has and how it compares to Autotune. But first of all, let's just have a quick listen to the raw vocal just with the music running in the demo of this session.
Quiet night, take me away with you. Tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
So as you can hear, it's a pretty good vocal performance. There's definitely a few places where there needs to be some tuning. Obviously, there's some other processing that I'll need to do and some editing, a little bit of timing stuff, and some sibilance adjustment. But for now, we're just going to open up METATUNE, check out all the different functions that it's got, and see how it works with this vocal. So we've got METATUNE open here, and first off, I've got to say I'm a big fan of how this plugin looks. It looks really super cool, super modern. I'm a big fan of all of the purples and blue hues that it's got going on, and it looks very futuristic. I definitely think Slate have leveled up in the way that this plugin looks. It's fantastic. So let's have a quick look at some of the different features of METATUNE. The first and probably the most important function here is this dial here, which controls how fast the pitch correction is applied. And as you can see, I've got it on a pretty transparent setting currently right now, but you can actually crank it even further than 0 milliseconds. You can go all the way to this sort of like height pitch correction setting, but we'll just take it back to where it was before. Also conveniently, you've got some undo and redo functions here up the top. Very useful in case you accidentally make a small adjustment and you want to go back to what you had before. The other really important function that we've got here is this dial here, which actually controls the pitch correction amount. So you can blend it in on a percentage basis. That's actually really powerful. And I'm not aware of any other real-time tuners in the market that actually have this function. So this alone is actually super useful to use this, especially if you want to have a really transparent style tuning. They've also got this other function up here, which controls the speed value of the tuning based on the note length. I'm usually finding that I'm liking this sitting around about minus 50%, but you can definitely use this to get some really cool and interesting tuning effects going on. I'm not so sure that I would push this up to 0% if I was just doing a standard transparent tuning. Some of the other basic functions that we've got here is choice here of the key. So we can see we've got a keyboard just here, which, shows obviously all the different keys available, and you've got the notes written up here. And if you move the mouse over here on the left-hand side, it'll pop up and it'll allow you to actually select the key, and it'll also allow you to select whether or not it's major, minor. It's got a few different options, pentatonics, harmonics, and you can also make your own custom scales. And you can actually change the keyboard as well. If you click on this button here, it'll change it to everything being in flats rather than in sharps, which is kind of useful, especially if theory isn't your strong point and you really want to be able to, see what's going on here. You can also choose to select it into chromatic mode, which I currently have not got selected. If you want to go for chromatic mode, you certainly can. Most importantly as well, you get to control the pitch reference down here. Most of the time you're going to want this to be on 440, but if you're working with maybe, I don't know, a progressive band or some kind of band that wants to have a different kind of tone, or you're working in microtones, it's important for you to be able to actually adjust the pitch reference here. There's a global bypass. Also, you can turn off the detected notes. As you'll see when we run the vocal running through here, you'll actually see the different notes that pop up along here, and you can actually turn those off as well. And you can also reset these as well up here. So enough preamble, let's have a listen to what METATUNE sounds like with this vocal. I'm just going to leave it with just the vocal on its own, leaving with these settings right here, and we're going to have a listen to what it sounds like doing a transparent tuning.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
So I'm going to be honest, straight off the bat, I'm actually really liking it. It does a really good job of the transparent tuning vibe. I think for this performance, I would probably say that there's a few notes that would need to be adjusted with a graphical tuner beforehand, but otherwise it's quite transparent and it works really nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just switch over to Autotune, which has got very similar settings on it run right now. And we're going to have a listen to what it sounds like with that vocal running through Autotune versus Metatune.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
Honestly, there's not that much difference going on. I know that the settings aren't exactly the same. You know, there's obviously a little bit of adjustment in terms of the way that Autotune works in its, retune speed versus the retune speed of Metatune. But generally speaking, they're both working really well. So it's just good to show that Metatune is actually standing up against, the industry heavyweight pretty well in the real-time aspect. Further on from that, you've also got this really cool function here, which is a doubler. And essentially, it's really easy to control. So all you need to do is just think about this little circle right here. And the further you push it up, the wetter the doubling effect is. And the further you push it to the right, the wider the double is. So, basically, if you want to use this as your doubler, rather than actually having to use a separate plugin to pull it off as a doubler, it's actually super powerful.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
As you can hear, it's got a really good sounding doubler here. I mean, I'm kind of a big fan of sort of having the doubler a little bit drier and the width really pushed. That kind of sounds really nice. What makes Metatune special as well is it also has this note stabilizer here, which allows you to control how long it's going to stay on a note, which is quite useful. It's its way of trying to get around the lack of graphical tuner. Probably the biggest weakness of Metatune is that it doesn't have a graphical tuner like Autotune or Melodyne. And honestly, a graphical tuner is super powerful and probably my most used thing when it comes to vocal tuning. I use Cubase, so I actually use Very Audio in Cubase, which I'm going to be debated on this, but I personally find that I think it's the most powerful and versatile graphical tuner on the market. You can definitely tell me if you feel differently. That's totally fine. But the note stabilizer is quite useful for a real-time tuner. So what it does is it allows you to actually adjust how long it's going to take before Metatune decides it wants to actually adjust the note tuning. So, in this particular case, it does not correct to notes shorter than 40 milliseconds on short mode. On mid, it is 80 milliseconds, and on long, it's anything shorter than 200 milliseconds. And this is useful on vibrato, as it says here, but it can affect the melody. Also, it has a low latency mode here, which is very useful for when you're tracking and you want to have a copy of Metatune on your vocal monitoring bus. So the actual vocalist who's, recording will be able to actually have that tuning running in real time for them as they're recording, which is a really good sort of morale booster and helps with the confidence of performance. So now let's try and see what Metatune sounds like when we're pushing the tuning just a little bit harder. Just going to bypass all the delay and reverbs, and we're going to drive this quite a bit. Let's bring it down to, like, say, 10 milliseconds here, and we'll just have a listen to what it sounds like.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
So there's a few points there where it sort of skips a little bit. I would definitely say on that long fa note, that sounds a little bit too pushed. I would probably dial down the tuning amount there. Let's see what it sounds like with the same tuning speed, but let's dial the mix percentage down to say 86 or so and turn the note stabilizer off, and we'll see what difference it's going to make.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
It's actually quite a lot nicer. And it's, you know, we've got a pretty short tuning speed here. So the fact that it's still holding up quite well on those sort of, you know, heavier tune sounds is really good. I mean, just for fun, let's see what it sounds like when you push it all the way and see how it sounds. We'll put the note stabilizer back on and see how that sort of super hard charge sound looks. I like how it's got the little lightning bolt there in the center as well. That's kind of cool.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows.
It's kind of cool. You definitely can pull off the super hard tune vibe on it. I'm much more of a fan of the way that it sounds transparently. Now let's have a listen to that in comparison to Autotune. Pushing Autotune will go, I don't know, say 10, and we'll bring the flex tune down a bit and the humanize down a bit, and we'll see what that sounds like.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
Honestly, it's actually not that dissimilar to what Metatune is doing. I would say that Metatune is definitely holding its own when it comes to the hard tune sounds. Obviously, I haven't pushed Autotune as hard as it can go, but I definitely think Metatune is sounding, you know, pretty good there. Let's listen to what it sounds like with a little bit of reverb and delay and with the rest of the music on.
Quiet night, take me away with you. And tension releases as breath flows. The river Styx is calling for me to come home, away from the sunset.
Pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It definitely has a lot of use that's available. I think I'm probably going to end up using this in a few different projects. That's for sure. Definitely on this song. So overall, I'm going to say Metatune as a real-time tuning plugin is actually really, really good. And I definitely think that it stands up against Autotune when it comes to working in real time. There's a few functions that it doesn't have. Obviously, the lack of graphical mode is, you know, a big factor in that as well. The formant adjusting that you can do in Autotune is really cool and can obviously do a lot of really awesome, super stylistic things that makes it very powerful. All of the vibrato adjustment that you can make in Autotune is very, very powerful, as well as all of the pitch adjustment that you can do, you know, pushing things up and down an octave and everything in between that you want to do with that as well. So do I think that it's better than Autotune? No. Do I think that it's super useful and can stand up in your production arsenal to use as a real-time tuner if you don't have Autotune? Absolutely. Do I recommend it? Yes, I do, because the Slate All Access Pass is super affordable. So if you don't have Autotune and you want a real-time tuner, I would recommend that you get Metatune. So there you go. Just a quick overview of what features Metatune has got. And as you can see, it's actually super powerful and really, really useful for your productions. I know I have Autotune, but I'm actually going to be using Metatune for quite a lot of things in my productions as well. After all, it doesn't hurt to try different things. But I'd love to hear your take on METATUNE, or whether or not you think it stands up to the other industry professional plugins. Throw a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of these tutorials. And if you want to level up your vocals, don't forget about our free vocal production course. But for now, take it easy.
Burn it down and bring the rebirth. I'll carve a world to bring you back and find you.